Welcome to Simple Conversation with ASG.
So, tell me, who is Andreas?
Andreas is a father of 5 sons, married for 23 years, and helps dads to get in shape.
Father of five. It must be a lot more than just exercise, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure. The oldest one of our sons is 21, the youngest is 7, and the others are somewhat in between. And there is a lot of action in our house. Not physically, but sometimes a bit more verbally. Yeah, that's what's going on.
Yeah. Have you found as obviously you added more to your family? Did you find that each one was harder or easier because you had done it before?
Whew, great question. Neither, neither harder nor easier because my wife and we've grown both into each and every one of our sons. Some couples say it's harder. Some say it gets easier. For sure, in experience in regard to what the toddler or the baby experiences and what they need, yeah, for sure, it's easier. But as they grow older and bigger, other challenges arise. So it's always something going on.
That was my next question. I was just about to say, as you have all sons, being a son myself, I know how crazy young boys can be. As you said, it gets harder as they get older. What is it that gets harder? Because you'd always assume that little kids run around, especially young boys, or they're all guns blazing, hell to the wall. I couldn't imagine that getting older would be more difficult.
Yeah. So what gets harder? I guess it's when it comes to authority, um, to do what we as parents ask from them. That gets a bit harder because when they get older, they seek to find their own way, make their own decisions, and sometimes they collide with ours. And so that's a delicate balance in getting from them what we know they should do and leaving them enough room to make their own experiences and mistakes and learn from them.
It's incredible the way you keep referencing and mentioning making their own decisions and having their own experiences, because I'm sure you've seen this yourself in other fathers and other mothers that they try and almost live their unfulfilled dreams through their kids. Is there a way that you found to hold back on that? Because I can imagine if you've had 5 sons, as a man yourself, there's definitely things that you would probably went through in life that you wish maybe they achieved more on than you did. Is it easier? Is it harder to pull away from that and let them have their own experiences, so to speak?
Um, yeah, for us, we made the decision, my wife and I, that if it's possible for us, we would support them in their ideas as long as they don't collide with our faith and what we think what's right for us as parents and what we are um, leading with in our family. Then we would support them. What we don't want is to do something similar what like our parents did, and you've mentioned it, that they tried to maybe it's a bit hard of a word, but oppose something from their dreams on their children. And sometimes when we have a discussion, it comes up a bit that we didn't do this or that, or didn't choose what they thought would be right for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's also part of life. And yeah, that's about it.
So you mentioned obviously you've got kids from all different age ranges. I would imagine, as you said, one of your sons is 21. So back when he was a kid, the social media wouldn't have been as big as it is now. I remember whenever I was a kid, I'm 25, and I
Yeah.
barely even knew what social media was. It was only kind of hotting up. So for your kids now that you said mentioned 1-7, are you kind of not? Are you not? I wouldn't say kind of getting off social media, but are you kind of being more mindful of what they consume or how much of social media they do consume?
Um, this is a tricky question. Um, my wife and I, we decided that our boys get a smartphone only at age 15, and they should go and work for it. If they want one, they have to buy one themselves. That was the first prerequisite. The other one was we put time restrictions on their IP address via our internet provider, and it worked up to a certain age. And it's around when they're around 18, then we give them free room because they have to learn how to manage it themselves. That's one point, and the other one is that they also have to manage the consequences if they stay up late and have to go out of bed early for school or study. That's when they experience the late nights and have to deal with it the next day. So yeah, that was our approach. If we can't say for sure that it's a great one because it's too difficult for each parent, especially this topic with social media. But I guess most parents try their best when they're aware of the dangers of social media. But from what I've heard and read online or in chats or in discussions, most parents aren't that self-aware about the dangers of social media because they are constantly on there themselves.
Yeah, I think just people in general aren't very aware at the minute with it, but I think that the way you've structured it is probably the best way to do it because they do get a sense of both sides of the coin. They do get the side of the good social media side where they can see people are creating content and people that are doing good, but then they can also see the bad part. But as you said, you put on restrictions with them. It does limit how much of that they do consume, which is a good thing. But the reason I asked it is because it seems to be growing more and more that everything's becoming social media, and it's unfortunate for a kid growing up now with this era because, as you know as well as me, was creating content on social media, you can very easily flip a story or a headline to mean something completely different. And if you create enough content on it, or if it gets enough eyes, it could just completely outweigh what the true meaning of the true story of the initial headline was, and
Yeah,
that can really mess with especially kids' judgment of the world, really.
Yeah, yeah, because when you rely, or when your information comes only from social media, then and you don't curate your feed, then you get manipulated for sure. Um, it's too easy now for
Way too easy.
any sort of agenda.
Yeah, because even a lot of recently, I've been speaking with a few people to come on the podcast that are kind of involved in American politics and stuff. And recently, now my feed's kind of coming up with things like Tucker Carlson making announcements and stuff. And
Hmm.
it's so incredible to me that a lot of politics now are being moved to social media, because it can be all well and good. It's a good way to make announcements or to spread awareness on things. But once that announcement's finished, it's very, very easy to scroll through the comments and see the conflicting opinions. And a lot of these people that are in high positions, you're going to have more haters than you do fans. And it's very easy for the court of public opinion to be swayed in an instant. And the people could end up leaving their own hate comments. And I suppose that's the biggest fear of any parent, is their kid becoming a hater online.
Yeah, yeah. Um, what I see in all this political stuff online is it's for those people, it's the fastest way to get insights into the people's minds, what they think, how they think, which words they use, um, especially if you have some sort of um, heavy computer powers. You can combine it with AI nowadays, and you get instant data, raw data for your campaign and or for your next move. So those guys have it much easier now to get real data very, very fast than 10 or 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's that I 100%, I can see it happen in front of my face. But I think that those people that are coming now onto the social media aspect of things, whenever they're going for positions of power in any aspect, it's it is a good way for them to gain exposure and things like that. But they may not get the position based on their beliefs or what they plan to do. Because I spoke with Todd Cuny about this, and he was mentioning that in America, in politics, you can pretty much get into a decent position if you understand marketing properly. Like things like
Mm,
Kanye West running for president should never ever happen. But if Kanye West comes out with a big enough marketing scheme and enough people rally behind him, there's a very, very like small chance, but there's a chance he could end up in a position with way more power than I think he needs to have at the minute. And it's kind of coming a scary time, because you're seeing more of these positions of power, not even just in politics and things like the law, moving to social media. And I think now for kids growing up, it could be a little bit a little bit terrifying for them to see, especially as they're young and still developing, because it could end up being the only thing they really have in their minds when they grow up.
yeah, yeah. I think it's not that pleasant for them, especially as you've said, when they're developing their minds, their beliefs, their thinking systems, and everything else. That's why I guess each parent should find their way, but I would never give our 7-year-old son, the youngest one, a smartphone and access to the internet. That's too dangerous.
You mentioned at the beginning that you've been married for, am I right in saying 20 years?
23, 24.
23, which is
Yeah, this year will be 24.
that's quite an achievement, especially in today's climate. But something I wanted to ask was, how, like, have you got any standout guidelines for maintaining a relationship for so long? Because you can see now in current trends that long-term relationships are really, really falling down a hole. Like there's only it's compared to how many relationships there are in the world in general. There's only a handful that are long-term now.
Yeah. So I'm a Christian. My wife, we both are Christian. And when we decided to marry, for us, it was for life until death us part. So that's the first point. The other one is we had our difficulties. There were periods where it was very tough for both of us, and but there was never the thought of let's split up and find another partner in crime and go our different ways. Um, Working through these hard and challenging times is not easy. It never is and never will be. And everyone who's in a long-lasting marriage, they experienced this in some sort. So um, for us, it's communication um, and listening to each other. It's I also think that you won't find something mm, heroic or something mind blowing as a recipe for a long lasting marriage. It's always the basics because when the foundation is weak, no matter what you build on top, it will break down.
I think that's the perfect point you made, was continuing to build on it, because there's a lot of people that I see all the time that they kind of bounce in and out of short term relationships when things get difficult or things get hard. But the reason that they are hitting those walls is because they've got into a relationship and they've thought this is it. This is all we need to do now. We just need to stay with each other forever, and they don't realize that you do need to still grow as you're in a relationship. You need to grow differently to how you were when you were single, but there is a growth period that still should be involved in your life, especially with a relationship. And it's hard to say what could be the root for the whole. As I mentioned earlier, that long term relationships are kind of becoming extinct to the public eye because the opinion now on attraction has been very swayed. It
Yeah.
used to be you do go for someone that's quite similar, as you said, that you've seen that your wife's got the same faith as you and the same values. But it seems now that people want something of value and they don't actually want a person's values.
Yeah, in today's society, it's mostly about short-term pleasures, open relationships, and so on. Um, I guess that's also part of the reason that when you're growing up and you start a relationship, at one point it gets maybe a bit tough. Then you split up, begin a new one, and when it's getting there tough, you split up again. And I think this vicious cycle continues until you start to work on yourself first. I've heard a
Yeah.
funny, I've heard a funny sentence. Uh, um, at least it was funny to us. If you want to change a person, marry one. So
I just
it,
I heard it in my head and I was like, I don't understand. And then I started to see examples of what you mean and I understood then.
yeah, it's impossible. The only person that can change is you.
Yeah.
So if both work on themselves, then only then you can accomplish each other's needs and pick the other partner up when they fall down, and so on and so on and so on. Um, it's a golden coin, and one side is you and the other side is your partner. So yeah, without working with if both don't work on themselves and what they want to achieve as a couple in the family, then it's really tough.
Has there been any advice or wisdom you've give to your sons that are growing towards that stage where they will be getting involved in relationships and things like that? Has there been any advice or wisdom you've give them on, you know, looking for the right things and not being blinded by things that over a long period of time won't really matter in the grand scheme of things?
Um, a funny thing I say to them is that um, if you like to eat meat, you can't marry a vegan. Never, it never works out.
There's many analogies that can be made from that statement.
So it's a bit fun, a funny sentence or funny advice, but there is a lot of truth to it, especially when you, like you've said, you see different examples with the same connotation, so to speak. And yeah, but in general, we have some good books in our library, and if they would like to develop a deeper relationship with a girl, we would definitely suggest them to read something. And if they have questions, they can always come to us.
So you're a father of five and you're married for 23 years. You're in your 40s, and if anyone that goes to your profile will clearly be able to see that you are in the top 1% of people without those characteristics, because you are in absolutely sickening shape. And it's something that stood out to me right away whenever I messaged you was I wanted to get onto these topics because it seems more and more now that the age of men that just kind of give up on their physical condition is getting younger and younger. And we're seeing it a lot now that it seems to be 30 is the break point, but it's very clear that it's going to get a lot lower, which is terrifying. But
Mm.
what has been your motivation to stay in such good condition when your life is growing in responsibilities to these things like parenthood and marriage and just the other side of adulthood?
Um, just so you know, I got in shape at 39. That was the first time. I tried it. I tried to exercise and watch my diet, etc., etc., for many, many years, but it was never, I was never longer consistent than uh, um, 3 months in a row. Then I slipped and everything got worse. But at 39, I got jaundice. You know what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. At 39, I got jaundice, and really had to rethink about my physical conditions. Um, and I knew that if I continue to eat, not to exercise, don't look after my health, my body, then eventually my liver would give up, and that's a certain death sentence. So this was my wake up call, and since then I'm, let's say, 95% on point with everything.
Can never be 100.
No, we are humans. We can't be 100% on point. It's also pointless because um, there is a certain dynamic like um, relationships. Not everybody is into eating well, exercising, and everything that comes with it. So the social aspect comes too. And I don't like to say to these terms like enjoy life, because I don't know what's so enjoyable if you put poison in your body. Uh, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, some things happen, and I have no problem with it, because let's say 90 up to 90% everything is all right. So a bit of what's the current norm, so to speak, in regard to eating or socializing is not a problem for me at all.
I had a conversation recently with a friend of mine who's a PT, and he's PT in Mexico, and he spoke about as new clients coming in and stuff after Christmas, and I asked him if there's any criteria of client that he would 100% reject, and he said it's someone that comes in and thinks they need to be 100% to the detail on point with everything. But he says that person is going to walk in my doors, and in 2 weeks they will never walk through them again,
Yeah.
because that's the problem people have with these New Year's resolutions of getting in the gym and losing weight and getting fit. It's you put an insane amount of stress on yourself, because if you go from not eating healthy at all to eating just healthy, you've lost a huge growth period. So when things do get difficult and things aren't as easy as I feel great, I'm fitting in my clothes, that's when you're going to really just veer off the ORM, because you haven't learned how to manage it properly. And he mentions that if you can be to the detail like these bodybuilders who are going for shows, but
Hmm.
you have to realize these bodybuilders going for shows for maybe about a month after those shows, they completely disregard every restriction they had, because they are on the borderline of going insane. They have almost lost their mind. And that's something that I think not even just people over a certain age, I think people in general need to understand that about diet in general. But you mentioned obviously the whole exercise aspect too, and anytime exercise get mentioned, and it's probably the reason why a lot of people with more influence than me or you that have stopped mentioning exercise and the gym completely, is because when it's brought up, people automatically think you need to be a bodybuilder, you need to be a powerlifter, you need to be ripping and seeing amount of weight off the floor, but they don't realize going for a walk after work is exercise. That's all we're
Yeah.
asking to do. It can be
Yeah.
so simple.
Yeah. For I have to admit, for me, it sounds a bit crazy to promote walking as exercise. It's something so normal, but when you read the statistics in regard to sitting is the new smoking, and how much people really move, it's really shocking that you have
It's
to,
incredible.
yeah, you have to promote something basic, foundational, like movement, a simple walk as a health benefit. But yeah, you're you're right.
Yeah, because I was watching a documentary on YouTube of some guy who lost a load of weight, and he was sitting in front of people who were want to be in his position. They want to lose weight, and he mentions the only real exercise he done was he walked every day, and they couldn't get their head around it at all. And he just turned around and he said, "Put your hands up if you walk more than once a week." Nobody put their hands up, and he said, "Put your hands up if you walk once a week," and still nobody put their hands up. And he sat there like, "You don't like you're thinking that I'm insane by saying a walk can change a lot of your habits, but you don't realize that the last time you walked was when you were probably learning to walk as a baby."
Yeah. Oh
It's
man.
so insane.
Yeah, yeah, that really is. Man.
So for men that do get into those deeper ages of 30, where it becomes a thing where not even just they neglect exercise and healthy eating and things, they seem to kind of just neglect the physical condition in general. Do you have any kind of, obviously you have some experience with getting sick and having diseases and things, so do you think that these people don't actually understand how much damage they're really doing to their body?
Yes, I think so. Because when I'll use the car as an analogy. When you buy a brand new car and let it sit for years in the garage, imagine getting it out and give it all you've got. So I think you break the car. Something will go wrong. Um, that's and the same happens with our body. I know that our bodies are capable of a lot of things. They compensate a lot. But when you don't take your body for a walk, as simple like that, then you also have to consider your nutrition. You can't just get your body, or you just can't go for a walk and eat donuts, bagels, and McDonald's, etc. This won't help. You won't find that much energy to get up from your comfortable couch. So it's kind of a combination. But yeah, you have to take care of your body and your health, especially for men. At around it's the peak of their testosterone levels is around 25, 30. It varies a bit, but then it's a steady decline, and also the muscle tissue declines too. And the only way to prevent that from happening as fast as it would happen when you don't exercise, the only remedy for this is to exercise a bit. You don't have to go to the extreme like the bodybuilders who do it uh, for money, so to speak. It's their job. They get
Yeah.
sponsored, etc., etc. But if you just a regular dude, you don't have to put crazy amounts in the gym or even at home. Um, I'd say that most dads don't even want a crazy physique, and so for the most for most people, 3 times a week, let's say 30 to 60 minutes, a whole body workout. It's all they need to stay in very decent shape. Combine that with nutrition, real whole food. Let's say at least 80% of the time, and everything will change.
A lot of these people that we talk about, that demographic that we're kind of aiming at here, they are married, they have houses, they're probably parents, and do you think that comfortability in life, seeing as they've kind of achieved their genetic goal, which was to reproduce and to have a family, do you think that comfortability they're feeling in life is a reason why they kind of just let themselves go a little?
I think it can be one of those reasons. Not the only reason, but one reason. Um, but in my mind, it's also that we as fathers forget that we lead the family, and we don't have to say much because our children don't do what we say; they do what they see. And so, if they see that we don't have some sort of healthy relationship to nutrition, to food in general, and don't participate in a some sort of active living, in any sort of exercise, they won't do it either. And then when they get older and get brainwashed with big food, big pharma, big government slogans in regard to health, they blame their DNA why they can't get in shape. And then they get something like Ozempic or any other drug and rely on the help of the big three.
As I was kind of researching this topic, and I got quite deep into it all week, but I seen a university in America polled one of their entire university, and the poll was very simple: yes or no. Does your father exercise or at least look after himself? And it's very simple: yes or no. And they wanted to see how many households now have a leading figure that does still take care of themselves, and they quickly were shocked by the results because every person who was placing highly academically or in sports or in some kind of activity in any way that they were placing towards the top percentage of people involved, their father all exercised and looked after their health, and they didn't have any outstanding health problems. And everyone towards the bottom, as it kept getting lower and lower towards the bottom of people who were really underperforming, you could really see the decline in how their father was taking care of his body, and it was getting worse and worse as you went down. And it is like you said, people do, men and especially, do forget that they are leading figures. I know that recently it's becoming toxic masculinity to say that, but it's still true. It's been true as long as time, and men have
Yeah.
kind of forgot that if the man doesn't set the example for what morals and kind of life lessons that you should be learning, it's very easy for the entire house to lose control because
Yeah.
there's no one there to guide them where to go.
Yeah. You lose your kids to guys like Andrew Tate and all the other figures who present some sort of um, fitness, health, wealth, girls, etc. Not that I blame Andrew Tate in any way, just as an example because he's very popular. And I think the heroes of the children should be their father and not a distant figure or someone from the internet. At least that's my opinion.
I think you're very true there, and I also do see the other side of it, where as much as social media may be damaging, it has birthed some figures that kids who maybe don't have a father in general, or don't have a father that's kind of taking charge of their own lives, never mind their kids.
Yeah.
They do have someone now that they could look at, and I'm not saying that Andrew Tate should be seen as a father figure for men, but if a kid that doesn't have any of those lessons that a dad should learn them through life, the way Andrew Tate speaks, I know he does have some questionable things he says, but he has got some lessons there from what a young man goes through and what a young man should do to build strength in himself. And he has got some lessons that could be very beneficial to someone who, like you said, the father isn't leading the way he should be.
Yeah, it's true, but also a bit sad, in my opinion.
It's
Uh,
very sad.
yeah, the whole thing that society purports on men is really damaging. It's
Terrible.
yeah, it's crazy, and the suicides that men commit, the breaking ups of marriages, and the divorce rates are extremely high. I think that society forgot or forgets that without without sound families, any nation will die. You can't build or sustain a nation where everybody does their own thing. Um, it never happened before, and it will never happen in the future. It will never succeed. The individualistic point of view.
Completely agree, and I think that it's something that needs to be fixed and addressed quickly because, like you said, the kind of only kind of announcement really of men nowadays is very negative, and it can be very easy for a man to see that and kind of let the word swallow him up a little bit. But as there is at the minute, kind of we do need to start kind of bringing men back up again. Men should be looking at those statistics. Like I hear every day, like new statistics about the male suicide rate or men that are just generally unhappy with their life, and it angers me to the point where I want to make sure I'm not part of that statistic because a young man growing up in 5-10 years time is going to be growing up in an incredibly scary place for a man if it's not met head on very soon, because I don't see a world where a young man can go strong morals and a strong mindset and strong values when the world around him is constantly telling him how bad a position men are in.
Yep, 100%. And it gets harder and harder the more single mothers you have in a society that raise their kids, especially young boys. They need a masculine father figure. He doesn't have to be somewhat of a bodybuilder, but a man who understands just the basics of food, nutrition, exercise, moral, uh, has character, um, does what he says, his word is his bond, etc., etc. Really basic stuff that got lost in many ways.
Yeah, and the first thing people think of when you do say things like they need to have a little bit of knowledge on exercise and health in general is they think that men just need to transform their bodies, but they don't realize that any gender person who's getting into any kind of realm of exercise or they're starting to take care of their body, and then it progresses more to they want to try and dress a little bit better, they want to try and have bigger goals, they want to make more effort in their day-to-day life, and that then improves where their mind goes. And something that you posted yesterday was a thread on the 7 simple steps to transform your body, and it got a lot of eyes on it, which is completely deserving because it was so incredible reading it. Because as you read through it, you realize that the steps that you were given are simple steps that people could make, that if they made them for just 1 year, they would look back and they probably wouldn't even recognize the person that was there at the beginning. And something that I wanted to kind of run through with you here to close it out was I'm going to state each step, and I want you to kind of go on and explain the benefits and what the step actually is. Okay?
Yeah, let's go.
So, step 1 is choose when and where you're going to train.
So most people don't even make the choice that they will go and train. They don't decide. They wake up and do whatever comes to their mind. But when you prepare, when you make a final decision, you schedule your exercise, let's say for starters, the first 4 weeks, 1 to 2 times in the week. You schedule it like an appointment to a doctor, and you make it brief, quick workout, let's say 15 to 30 minutes, and you start to develop a healthy habit.
Step 2 is by far my favorite and one of the best advice I've seen on social media in a while, which was instead of relying on motivation, use discipline.
Yeah, when you, I like to use the analogy of two different types of fires. So motivation is something like an outburst of a firework, and discipline is a constant flame that gets fueled with wood. And when you have both the motivation and the combination of discipline, then you get much further than just relying on motivation alone. Um, yeah, that's it.
Step three was a link to a previous thread that you had about the importance in building strength. What can you briefly go through what the importance of building strength really is in terms of body and mind?
Um, the thread goes a bit into in depth into the benefits of more muscle mass than body fat, and it focuses on simple steps like uh, high protein diet, um, healthy fats, fibers, etc., and also focusing on the uh, basic compound movements for exercise, like for body weight exercises, this would be push-ups, pull-ups, dips, or body weight squats, pistol squats, lunges, etc. Nothing fancy. Focus on the basics. You get the most for your bucks.
Step four was, as you mentioned, pay attention to compound exercises.
Yep, it's the compound exercises are the foundation you build up everything. Um, I'm I was always fascinated by the calisthenics guys or the gymnasts, and when you analyze them, you find out that they repeat the basics: pull-ups, push-ups, dips, squats, deadlifts. Uh, I almost said daily, but that's too much. But in general, everything else is built upon these compound exercises.
It's incredible that you brought up calisthenics because I'd always heard about calisthenics, but I'd never really understood what it was until recently when I met someone who does it, and I just asked him briefly, just could he go through what a program would be like on it, because it's all body weight, and I could only kind of think of few exercises you could do body weight wise that would be beneficial, and he honestly just kind of rhymed off the same few exercises that he done just every 2 or 3 days, and it kind of brought to light that people that go into the gym, especially, really do neglect the compound exercises that can benefit them in more ways than one, and they go to isolation workouts. But
Yep.
you can you can achieve so much body wise by doing just the very basic exercises that you're taught in schools, even.
Yeah, and also people forget that the basic exercises, the compound movements, nothing else comes close to real life situations when you train them in the gym or in a calisthenics park, because every isolation movements, some bicep curls or shoulders or traps and calves, etc. It's fine when you want when you see that a muscle group is kind of behind. It's okay, absolutely fine, but for most people, they don't need that much, because the compound movements, they compensate a lot for what they're about to experience in real life situations.
Step five is train your lower body.
Yeah. Oh, it's so easy, especially in the calisthenics community, to find guys with well-developed upper body physiques and chicken legs. um, Especially men and women, they don't have, they forget that the biggest muscle group they have is not their back, is their legs. And also, the legs are the foundation you walk daily on. And if you build your house on sand, on a weak foundation, and the storm hits, I guess you know what will happen. So, um, never forget your legs, especially men. It also helps with your testosterone levels. So, train your legs, guys, twice a week.
It seems to be the big kind of daunting part of any kind of gym plan is people look at that leg day and they're like, oh, can I not just do something on my arm day that'll do the same job? And
Yeah, yeah. Another tip of mine is, if you, some guys really like to train legs, but most don't, and that's why I suggest start your Mondays with your legs and enjoy the rest of the week.
it's a perfect way to set it up. I've started doing it and it's been a lot less of a kind of scary day now for me because I'm getting it out of the road. But there's a guy I follow on Twitter who he works in merging businesses, and he's always got these videos he posts of himself, and he says every time that before he even thinks about signing a contract to merge with a business owner, he takes him to the gym and puts him into leg exercises. And if he even mentions or breathes that he doesn't train his legs, he just completely voids the deal. He says, "Cause if he can't bring himself to do something as simple as a squat once a week, he's no use in my department."
Yeah, I like that.
It's
Awesome
so
way.
simple.
Yeah, yeah.
Step 6 is changing who you are.
Yeah, because changing who you are, it's a gradual process. The fitness thing is a lifestyle for life. And if you've never done it before, if you didn't take care of your one and only bodysuit, it's very hard to go all in, like you've mentioned earlier, with the New Year's resolution. So, a gradual progress um, is the easy way to establish new habits, and that only happens if you stay on track day in and day out with simple steps. Start with walking if you've never exercised, increase that, get a backpack, make it a bit tougher, raise your heart rate, and slow and gradually progress, do some bodyweight exercise. Eventually, you grow into it and you'll like who you're becoming.
I can imagine anyone who did go through the thread and seen that point was probably a little bit discouraged to read on because it seems to be such a difficult thing for people to understand as you have to change who you are. But I'd see it all the time. I see people always throwing out comments saying that no, they're not happy with themselves, they don't like how they look, they don't like how they feel, and then a couple of months down the line they're like, I'm gonna stop because don't I don't recognize myself. I can feel myself changing, and I always just sit back and laugh because you very clearly didn't like who you were. So, is there any real problem if you're not that person anymore? It
Yeah,
should be a good thing. No,
yeah, for sure.
I could never
Especially,
understand.
yeah, esp- I've read a quote from Jim Rohn, and he said, "You can always change. You're not a tree. You can move."
I've seen this so many
So,
times. It's
and
phenomenal.
yeah, and the other thing is when you would ask a tree how tall the tree would like to grow, the only answer you would get, as high as I can, as
Exactly.
tall and as big as I can. But we humans, we
Yeah,
have much more potential, and we don't do it.
it goes in every aspect. Even people with they say they feel like they're in toxic friends groups and stuff. Like I remember I've seen this clip kind of resurface and all that, and I'm so glad it does because I remember seeing it on TV when I was a kid. But it was an old school comedian was sitting in a room with reporters, and they were asking him questions that he didn't. They probably shouldn't have been asking him. They were kind of invading his privacy. But one of the reporters mentioned that you kind of gave out on people that stay in bad environments and don't change. And he says because they have the freedom to change. There's a lot of objects in the world that can't change that they're an object. You know, there's chairs that want to be tables, and there's trees that want to be the sun, but they can't change. And he said that the problem with people is they don't understand the freedom they have. And he said it's very simple. I don't want to be in this room. And he just got up and left. And everybody couldn't wrap their head around the lesson he was showing. But then he came out in our interview and he said, that's literally how easy it is to change. You just get up and abandon what you were doing that you clearly didn't like.
Yes, it's easy on the one side. On the other side, when your relatives and or let's say your family doesn't support what you want to do in regard to health, then it's a bit tough. But for me, I'm very blessed to have a very supportive wife. We learn a lot of things in regard to health, exercise, each on our own, and it's a beautiful thing to grow together.
The final step is don't fail twice.
Yep, that's right. Especially as a beginner, if when you try to develop this new healthy habit of exercise or and let's say exchanging one meal for a healthy one, um, it's very easy to fall back to the bad habits when you failed twice. um, Especially if you've done it three times, then it gets very very hard. But we are not perfect. We are humans, and just acknowledge, okay, I've done it. Not a big mistake. Tomorrow is the next day. I'll do it better. Or I have another meal. I'll change that. Or I didn't exercise yesterday, but today is the day, and that's it's also an easy way to hold yourself accountable. Never fail twice.
The reason I was so glad that people viewed it so many times and that I looked through the comments and people got so much value from it is the steps you gave are exactly as they say in the title. They are so simple, but people want overproduced quotes and things that they can put in their Instagram story that can go viral, and they don't realize that the things you wrote are so simple, and if they were done consistently, they would completely transform a person. But the problem with simple steps is people think simple means easy, where they don't
Yep.
realize what you've said is very simple. You can make these changes in a day, in a week, in 2 weeks, like it's nothing, and you probably won't even feel like you're doing anything. The problem comes when you get to 4 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years. That's when doing these simple things every day, they lose the excitement they had on the first day.
Yep. Yep. That's that's that happens to me with exercises. um I tried different other stuff. Gladly I didn't hurt myself, but I've noticed that I didn't grow from knowledge or even from the development of my physique as much as when I focused, let's say, 80% on the basics, on compound movements, and then had a time for fun, so to speak. Um, and also, these simple steps there are a foundation. When you get sidetracked, you can always fall back on to them, and you're on the right track again. They never disappoint. They've worked every single time, not just for me, but any type of diet or whatever you call it. There are simple, basic things, and you just have to do them.
Andreas, this has been an absolutely phenomenal conversation. Went a lot better than I ever expected it to. I feel like we've dropped some knowledge that people probably weren't expecting to hear at this time of the day. But listen, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've got a lot of entertainment from it. I've got a lot of wisdom from it, and it's great to hear from someone's point of view that is a lot older than I am, and a lot older than people that probably will be listening to this. My audience is quite varied, but the reason why I wanted to bring you on for the podcast was my audience on Twitter is very, very young. They're quite young men coming into adulthood, whereas my podcast audience is the complete opposite. It seems that my audience on Spotify and YouTube ranges from 30, 31 to 58. So it's
Awesome.
I think now that both audiences now you can see different lessons and get different takes from it, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so too, man. It was a pleasure.
Andres, I will no doubt have you back on again in some months' time so we can go through more of these as dynamics change in the world. But as far as this meeting's been, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I want to thank you so much for coming on. I feel like you've given me a lot to think about this weekend.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I've enjoyed it too, and I hope that the listeners, no matter their age, find a nugget or two from our conversation and apply it to their life and see how it works out. I guess it will be better.
I have no doubt they will, Andres. Thank you so much for coming on, and hope you have a great weekend.
The same. Bye bye.
Bye bye.